Cordialic. It's such a great pleasure to see all young people gathered and who are interested in science. And I have to tell you that I do want to offer my very best wishes to all of the students participating in this year's Young Scientist and Technology exhibition. And I'm sure there are some who will have been disappointed that the weather made it impossible for them to attend, but I send them my best wishes, and I'm sure that I know some of the schools, they have a reputation for excellence in science, and good luck to those who have filled the gaps. But I want to pay tribute to all of those teachers and parents who have been such an essential source of encouragement, and to all those who have been helpful in any way, parents, communities, Tris Liam Liv Galair. And this is indeed a very special, as you have just heard, a very special occasion for BT, because it's their 25th year in looking after this important exhibition. And I think, as well as that, I think about 180 of their staff volunteer to make it all possible, and I pay tribute to them. It's a very, very, very Tris Liam Liv. And I must say, I've probably seen before I leave, it's a very, very long time, 60 years ago, when that brilliant idea, just shows you the life of a brilliant idea, Dr. Tony Scott and Father Tom Bark, who established 60 years ago the idea of the Young Scientist. I'm delighted to have had the opportunity of having opened the Young Scientist. You notice I call it that because that's what it is known around the country in the schools. The Young Scientist is rather like, are you going to the ploughing? Are you going to the Young Scientist? But I'm so encouraged that this exhibition goes from strength to strength. 2,069 projects submitted to compete in this year's competition, and then from that 550 selected to go to compete here at the RDS. And I'm so pleased that in a special way that students from Austria and Denmark, Italy, Jordan, Kenya and Luxembourg are taking part this year. How often I think Tony Scott and I and others have said, science knows no borders. Firkin Folcherov, you are so welcome. And I welcome too the students from the 9 schools of Northern Ireland who have qualified this year. Congratulations to all who have made it to the competition. Agus ach go háirithe I measc na scoileanna raibh an teasta ar Scoil Guido. Those schools, again, I say, those who weren't able to travel, my very best wishes to you. Projects this year cover a range of fascinating topics that are so important, including health, climate change, and ecology. And one thinks about these projects, they show a scientific curiosity, but also a range of new and adaptable technologies in these areas. Encouragingly, projects on the theme of environmental sustainability, including pollution, waste management, renewable energy, biodiversity and conservation, they accounted for 1/4 of all projects entered for 2025. I look forward to seeing some of them later on today. At a more general and fundamental level, may I suggest that the future of humanity requires a science without borders, yes, but also one built on cooperation in the interest of humanity, something that is accepted as a shared responsibility. In relation to such an achievement today, I want to pose some questions to all of the young people, and indeed to all of us gathered here today. Our scientists of tomorrow, as you will be, what is the appropriate place for science in society? To whom should its benefits primarily seek to serve? I suggest to you as well that the history of scientific curiosity is a very rich source. Ancient civilizations engaged with both abstract thinking and practical issues, including hydrology, astronomy and ethics and legal rights, such as the Code of Hammurabi. In many cultures, scientific curiosity drew contributions from the greatest minds, many of whom combined it with philosophy. Today, the role of social values in research, the neutrality of science in policy, the interplay between evidence and decision-making, the structures of ownership, their use and abuse and control are very much real issues. May I suggest to all of you that as young scientists, the greatest fulfillment for yourself and others can be when you locate your contribution within a commitment for the welfare of all global citizens. To achieve this, studying science includes giving time for the history of science. Long before its present contemporary applications, science was as important. And it didn't begin in Europe in the 18th or 19th century. There are many ancient civilizations, and they're worthy of study. And I think it is very important to consider these, very important to look at the opportunity to assess priorities. We are living in circumstances that have given rise to multiple interlocking challenges and indeed crises, existential as in terms of nature itself, rising poverty, deepening inequality and global hunger, catastrophic climate change and biodiversity loss. And in the midst of all of this, the ongoing promulgation of war and an encouraged perception of the impotence of diplomacy. All of these present circumstances are inextricably linked. Indeed, this challenging, even depressing context, it is of both an exciting and a morally challenging time to be a young scientist. Challenging, undoubtedly, but so potentially fulfilling to know that the choices you make will have effects that are important, not just for your own time, but for the very possibility of life in its diverse forms on our shared and vulnerable planet. Science is such an important and influential discipline. As I have said, and I keep emphasizing it, one with a history as old as human thought. Science offers great possibilities that have a pivotal role to play and at its best in responding to the great humanitarian challenges of our time. It has the potential to make an essential contribution to understanding, sustaining, and making our world more fulfilling for us all in peaceful coexistence with nature and each other. The philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin saw this as being achievable, but only through nothing less than a species evolution in human consciousness. For science is never neutral in its purpose or application. How its fruits are used and distributed is one of the tests of our humanity, our shared cultures, our ethics. Science does not seek to offer an absolute universal truth for all time. It does, however, offer a method and methodologically verifiable interpretations that can question certainties, trigger reflections, generate valuable questions. Yes, the fruits of science and its history in our more modern times have revolutionized life, enabling tremendous social change with humankind benefiting from scientific advances in so many areas of life. Yet we must recognize that the misuse of scientific knowledge has been and can be disastrous for us all. Theodor Adorno of the Frankfurt School of Philosophy was maybe one of those earlier scholars to warn of the limitations of science without moral responsibilities. The slow development of science and understanding for the human brain, for example, with its orientation, has been pushed away for authoritarian and short-term application, covertly and overtly, ignoring key emancipatory disciplines, ones that could help us achieve the goal of being able to live together in conditions of mutual respect and peace. These include philosophy, sociology, ethics, and normative economics. I say all this because I believe we are at a turning point, a very important turning point in human history, when we have to say where we stand on the questions we stand for and the answers that are on offer. The alternative is a science without moral compass as to its applications, the use of science as a tool for the acquisition of unaccountable power and influence in a manner that threatens democracy itself. History shows us that when being exercised and practiced in the wrong hands, are funded by those of authoritarian tendency for insidious purposes, science can produce catastrophic results. Science, for example, can at the present time be employed to generate ever more sophisticated weapons and instruments of death and destruction. Instruments, the availability of which is used to generate fear for populations, while supporting the insatiable drive of the military-industrial complex for profits, even if this is at the cost of undermining democratic accountability through corruption, unaccountable lobbying, bribery, in continents where millions are starving and societies are being divided over access to resources for life itself. What a shocking statistic it is that while military expenditure increased for the 9th consecutive year in 2023 to a figure of $2.44 trillion, the highest ever recorded, at the same time, the number of people affected by hunger has risen by 200 million globally. It is important that we respond to this use of science and the rhetoric that calls for war as a state of mind, including the recent appalling comments from NATO calling for ever more armament spending to be achieved. This may, we were told, cause pain in the present so as to achieve security in the future, in the words of the Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Rutte. He said that we should have the mentality of war, even at the expense of investing in essentials in education, social protection, and health. We must envisage a respectful engagement with those of different and diverse outlook. And we must all together work for peace, I suggest. All of the international instruments which in the history of humankind have been collectively agreed by a diversity of nations and peoples are predicated on the possibility of peace. The UNESCO Charter, for example, states that peace begins in the minds of men and women. And this is also the basic foundation of the terms of the European treaties. It is why the European Union was founded, so that we might never again have devastating wars. And we must avoid indifference, or, if you like, a silence to such moral choices. We must be active in seeking a positive science that can yield truly emancipatory shared results for humanity. Science has in recent times, for example, dramatically changed our means of communication, the way we work, our production of food, our methods of transportation, and through medical research and practice, even the length and quality of life itself. Science has, through long hours spent in laboratories, come to our aid with vaccines and responding to pandemics. However, appropriate public transparency and a commitment to cooperate and share science has yet to be achieved as a common practice, and that included even responding to pandemics. What a powerful example, too, of the positive role which science can play in providing irrefutable scientific evidence of climate change. In taking on that responsible role, among its other contributions, science has helped to inform a social, economic, and political debate and movements on the urgent need to replace greenhouse gas emissions and thus remain within the planet's ecological boundaries, protect the Earth and all the life on it from the catastrophic consequences of global warming and biodiversity loss. Such scientists' work has been delivered through our shared United Nations, and support for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals drew on it. And I think it is something. The goals there must be no retreat from them, and we must all ensure that we offer our support towards, in fact, actually quickening our action so as to achieve the projects that have been agreed. It is important, therefore, not to be indifferent to the responsibilities of science in enhancing a moral consciousness as to the importance of working within an ethical framework, a consciousness that must be central to any scientific endeavour, and one that can help us guide our use and application of scientific discovery. I have faith in the ability of young scientists. This is my final year as president, speaking to the young scientists. But I know from my meetings with them that they are more than willing to work for the benefit of all humanity, beyond any well-earned personal reward. And these are not binary choices. The vulgar depictions of life on offer from those who see scientific innovation as an opportunity to brandish their wealth and power are not regarded as human models to be emulated by the young scientists that I have been meeting over the years, and that is welcome. The vulgarity of it all is for another day. We have so many great models of Irish scientists who pursued science for social betterment. I think of the groundbreaking work of Nobel laureate William C. Campbell from Donegal, whose research on river blindness led to the drug ivermectin, which was made available to all by Merck from 1987, leading 30 years later to 3 billion treatments being delivered and river blindness being eliminated in Central and South America and significantly reduced in Africa. Other Irish scientists whose efforts focused on a social outcome include the late Robert Collis, the Dublin doctor, who pioneered the technique for feeding premature infants via a nasal tube and who invented a simple but affordable incubator for premature infants. I think of the late Vincent Barry from Cork, who led a medical research team that discovered a compound that ultimately yielded a treatment for leprosy. The work of Dr. Dorothy Stopford-Price is closely associated with the BCG vaccine, which protected against tuberculosis at a time when 16% of deaths in Ireland were attributable to the disease. Doctors Campbell, Collis, Barry, and Stopford-Price, they are in the tradition of the great Dr. Jonas Salk, who believed that scientific discoveries should benefit all without borders, state or fiscal. And then, too, we have the great, a friend of mine, I'm proud to say, the great Shoeborn scientist and author, philosopher, Mike Cooley. He understood what a moral outrage it had become, what a great failure with all the material resources available, that our boundless capacity for creativity and innovation and the fruits of science and technology remain focused in so many parts of the world, not on the ending or the elimination of preventable global hunger or famine, or the promotion and preservation of peace, or indeed on reducing sources of inequality, but rather on the pursuit of ever more deadly technologies as instruments of war. Surely there is an alternative, as Dr. Cooley and others have shown. Surely knowledge and discoveries for sharing and the practice of science and the appropriate delivery of its work through appropriate technology should flow to all, unimpeded by boundaries or income. Science itself, we must never forget, is a method that includes cooperative work, sharing of purposes as well as the joy of discovery, even the particular joy of serendipitous discoveries. We're all paying the price for the absence of that evolved consciousness of which Tyler Judan wrote, a consciousness that would lead to an international politics that enabled the sharing of such scientific and technological discovery. That would have made possible that governments, citizens, and corporations work together, cooperate with real meaning and purpose, with the aim of ensuring that the fruits of science and the rewards of technology contribute solutions to the great global social, economic, and ecological challenges that we all face. There is a vital role for ethical science in seeking to advance the possibilities of fulfillment for all that are there beyond the narrow provision of its abuse as being simply a source of wealth for any single individual or corporation. We have had the capacity to eliminate extreme global poverty. Preparing for war has driven it off the agenda. And as I wrote this speech, dear friends, young people, 6 infants under 4 weeks old had died of hypothermia in their tents in Gaza, having been displaced 3 times from places. And the grieving father of twins who had died said, "There were 8 of us, and we had only 4 blankets." Available waterproof tents, food and clothing, over 1.5 million's worth, was present in the region, but organizations were prevented from giving it to starving families in sub-zero conditions. Now is the time, and this, I have a sense, is going to be a decade of great importance in rethinking the relationship between science and society in its multiple manifestations. Young scientists and technologists, yes, there's a great responsibility, but there are ever-increasing opportunities too to give examples of conscientious work and a conscience as to how it will be applied. I said the moral choice that you make will have repercussions for us all. And we all have responsibilities not to remain silent when there are catastrophic outrages of humanitarian law presented in front of us. What encourages me to hope is that I see gathered here again this year not only brilliant young scientists, technologists, full of innovative ideas and creativity, and their teachers and parents, but also people who are interested in becoming enthusiastic global citizens. And all of that bodes well for their giving support and leadership in the achieving of a sustainable and cohesive future, not only on our island, but in the world, and a harmonious existence for life on our vulnerable planet. I look forward to reading in the future of you young scientists being added to the great socially oriented scientists that I have mentioned for the benefit of all, and not only at home, but in the heavily populated continents of the world, in Africa, South America, and Asia. And may I encourage you all to help each other with patience and kindness in your work, and to cooperate in advancing the truly emancipatory potential of science for society and for all of life. May your participation in the Young Scientist further drive your interest and determination to continue to play a role not just in science but in all of the aspects of life, the applications of science and its delivery for the betterment of all on our shared vulnerable planet. Tres liam liv Eliog, gach daltach and scola clock part, agus gach den a vi caurach glob, is per gach banach den taki, ni wan den blien Natalia chiacht, ach den taki fort. I so wish you all a very happy new year and health and fulfillment in your work together for the future. Mo vui live, thank you.